As a premier community in Hampton Roads, James City County strives to maintain a high quality of life for all citizens through sound fiscal management and legislative actions. In an ongoing effort to increase transparency, your Board of Supervisors holds public meetings to garner citizen input before making important decisions. Here's tonight's meeting agenda. Stay tuned. The Board of Supervisors meeting will begin shortly.
Everybody ready? I call to order this meeting of the James City Service Authority Board of Directors for a regular meeting. Good evening, Mr. Powell.
Good evening.
Could you please call the roll?
Mr. Eisenhower.
Here.
Mr. McGlennon.
Here.
Ms. Larson.
Here.
Mr. Hippel.
Here.
Ms. Sadler.
Here. Any presentations?
No, ma'am.
Any public comment?
No, ma'am.
Well, on our consent calendar, we have the minutes adoption. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Any public hearings?
No, ma'am.
Okay, board considerations. First on the list, changes to the regulations governing utility service and resolution of appropriation for fiscal year 2024 budget. Mr. Powell.
Just as a brief review, the proposed fiscal year 24 budget is $24,560,311, which is a 2.1% increase over the current fiscal year. It includes an overall 3.5% increase in water charges. There are no increases proposed in sewer charges. If approved, a customer that uses 5,000 gallons per month would see their bill increase from $45.71 a month to $46.71 a month, an increase of exactly $1. The only other proposed fee increase in the budget is for the grinder pump maintenance program, and that fee is proposed to go from $400 to $425. Staff recommends that you adopt the two resolutions that are in your packet. One is the appropriation, and the other are the changes to the regulations governing utility service.
Any questions? I'll look to the board for a motion.
Move the resolution of appropriation.
Mr. Powell, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlennon?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye. Next is contract
I
award.
think we have the other
sorry.
resolution.
The
as well.
resolution.
Right.
Two resolutions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And the second resolution is the resolution on utility service, and I move the approval.
Mr. Powell?
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlennon?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye. Next, contract award for $551,308 variable frequency drives replacement systems, East Inc.
57 Toshiba variable frequency drives, also known as VFDs, at 10 water production wells and 18 lift stations are approaching the end of their useful life. A VFD is a hardware and software package that controls the motor speed and power and pump and motor assemblies. These units are going to be replaced with Yukawa VFDs that meet current JCSA design specifications. JCSA and purchasing determined that the most efficient procurement method was a cooperative purchasing agreement with the Prince William Service Authority and with Systems West Incorporated. Staff negotiated a turnkey package with Systems East for $551,308. Systems East has successfully completed work for the James City Service Authority in the past. Funds are available from the Water Fund Repair and Replacement Reserve and the Sewer Fund CIP. Staff recommends approval of the resolution authorizing the award of the VFD replacement contract to Systems East in the amount of $551,308.
Any questions for Mr. Powell, or I look for a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Powell, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson? Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye. Next is contract award for $158,000, water main replacement along Jack L. Massey Bridge at College Creek, and authorization for general manager to execute final contract.
JCSA 16-inch, 710-foot-long steel water main attached to the Jack Massey Bridge on Route 199 at College Creek is approaching 50 years in service and needs to be replaced. Since this project requires extensive coordination with VDOT on both the design and the construction, JCSA used the fixed-price design-build procurement process with a two-step competitive negotiation process to select the design-build team. Ultimately, Henry S. Branscombe LLC, in partnership with Draper Aden, was chosen as the design-build team. The contract award of $158,000 consists of surveying, structural investigation, geotechnical, and field services to gather the data necessary to get to a 70% submittal and design document. The remaining fees shall be finalized after the 70% design fee stage. Total project cost is currently estimated to be $1,159,000. This resolution authorizes the general manager to execute the final contract up to $1,159,000. But if the amount increases above that, it will require that I come back to you for further approval. So staff recommends approval of the resolution, which awards the $158,000 contract for field services and design development, and then authorizes the general manager to execute a final contract for the negotiated total project cost up to the amount of $1,159,000.
Any questions, or I look for a motion?
I'll move that motion.
Mr. Powell, please.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye. Next, contract award, fire hydrant inspections and maintenance.
An invitation for bids for the annual inspection and maintenance of JCSA's approximate 2,864 fire hydrants was issued, and 3 firms responded. Tideland Services was determined to be the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. They have successfully done work similar to this for other local utilities, including Newport News Waterworks and the City of Suffolk. The initial contract term is 1 year with 5 possible renewals of 1 year each. JCSA's operating fund budget includes $125,000 for this activity. Staff recommends approval of the resolution authorizing fire hydrant inspections and maintenance contract to Tideland Services.
Any questions, or I look for a motion?
I actually do have
Oh, go ahead.
a question about this. I was struck by the wide variation in pricing. Is there any reason for that?
I don't know that I can give you a great answer. I know that the current contractor that we were using, we had an option to renew with them without going through a competitive process, and they increased their estimate to us dramatically, which is why we ended up going through this competitive process and choosing a different vendor. I think that there's probably some economies of scale that we're getting because they do this for Newport News Waterworks as well, so they already have a presence in the area. But that's probably the best answer I can give you.
They're not going to be painting advertisements on the fire hydrants or anything like that?
That's not part of the agreement.
Okay. Well, that being the case, I would move the resolution.
Mr. Powell?
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye. Next is board requests and directives. Anybody have anything? Any questions?
Just thank you for our gathering, in which we discussed a lot of issues about what's going on with JCSA. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your leadership and the leadership of your team over there. You really got hardworking people, and that get called out all kinds of time, and
Yeah.
just do a wonderful job for the citizens. So thank you.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
thank
Ditto,
you.
I echo that. It was very informative, and I appreciate the time you and your team took to go over a wide range of topics with us. So thank you again for that. It was very, very great. Anybody else?
Thank you for your comments, and appreciate your feedback during that process.
Okay, general manager's update.
I don't have any further updates.
Okay, well then I look for a motion to adjourn 5 p.m. on June 13th, 2023 for a regular meeting.
So moved.
Mr. Powell?
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, call this meeting, James City County Board of Supervisors, regular meeting on May 9th at 5:08 PM. Roll call, please, sir.
Ms. Sadler?
Here.
Ms. Sadler represents the Stonehouse District. Mr. Eisenhower?
Here.
Mr. Eisenhower represents the Jamestown District. Mr. McGlinnan?
Here.
Mr. McGlinnan represents the Roberts District. Ms. Larson?
Here.
Ms. Larson represents the Berkeley District and is Vice Chair of the Board. Mr. Hipple?
Here.
Mr. Hipple represents the Powhatan District and is Chair of the Board. Sitting to my far left is Adam Kinsman, County Attorney. I'm Scott Stevens, County Administrator, and my pleasure to be Clerk to the Board. Mr. Chair?
Thank you. All right, next we'll do a moment of silence, but before the moment of silence, we'll introduce our pledge leader. I'll look to Supervisor Larson for that.
Thank you so much. Tonight, we have Camden Wall with us. Camden is a fifth grader at Matoka Elementary. He is here with his parents, Preston and Christy Wall. He also has a younger sister in first grade, Parker. Camden is into a lot of sports, soccer, basketball, swim, golf, and tennis. So sounds like he's a pretty busy young man. But he also carries a good scholastic record. He is an honor roll student and a vision student as well. So Camden, we very much appreciate you coming out this evening to do our pledge. And I think you know what to do, so if you'll just come on up as soon as we have a moment of silence.
I need some. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And if you'll come up, we have a, I don't think, Jason's here.
Latar might have.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, Latar's coming.
Latara's got it.
To the outside.
Good job.
Thank y'all for coming out too.
All right, at this time, I'd like to exercise the chairman's privilege to bring forward a proclamation for Public Service Recognition Week. And I guess we'll go to the podium.
I want to thank our chairman for allowing me to present this proclamation. It's Proclamation Public Service Week Recognition, May 7th through the 13th, 2023. Whereas celebrated annually during the first week of May since 1985, Public Service Recognition Week is a time set aside to honor employees of the federal government, state, and local governments and members of the uniformed services. And whereas the citizens of James City County are served every day by public servants who provide a range of diverse services with integrity and efficiency, and whereas James City County employees have demonstrated their dedication and resilience by continuously providing exceptional public service despite challenges such as the COVID-19 pandemic recovery, our staffing challenges, and increasingly complex workloads, and whereas public service in community development, general services, social services, economic development, human resources, fire, police, parks and recreation, financial and management services, information resource management, county administration, and more. And whereas James City County recognizes the generous contributions of time and talent by public employees and community volunteers and the importance of the services they render, and whereas without these public servants at every level, continuity would be impossible in a democracy that regularly changes its leaders and elected officials. Now be it resolved, our chairman of the Board of Supervisors of James City County does hereby proclaim May 7th through the 13th, 2023 as Public Service Recognition Week in James City County and encourages the community to honor and recognize the accomplishments and contributions of the remarkable individuals who power our local government. In witness whereof, he has herefore set his hand and caused the seal of the County of James City, Virginia, to be affixed this 9th day of May, 2023. And I want to thank all of our employees and our chairman for recognizing that as well. to put those employees in the audience in a bad space, but if you please come forward and be part of our picture in recognition and receipt of this proclamation. So, choice or otherwise, come on forward, Ball and staff, Alistair, everybody. Yeah, those, sometimes we get a choice, sometimes we don't, right?
Today's your day to shine. All right, next we'll move into public comment. Before I open up the public comment, I'd like to recognize Peg Boarman for the Volunteer Lifetime Achievement Award. Good job. Peg has worked tirelessly for us since 1979 on just trash alone, not including all the things of raising such a wonderful family and promoting James City County and taking care of trash. And, you know, every time I look on the road and I see a clean area, I think of you. And when I see a dirty area, I think how mad you'll be because it's dirty. So thank you for everything you do and everything you've done for the county. Would you like to say something?
You want to make me cry now. Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board, Mr. Stevens, Mr. Reithammer, Mr. Kinsman. I might get emotional, but anyway, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm Peg Boarman, and I reside at 17 Settlers Lane in downtown Lightfoot. And yes, I come for you to talk a little bit of trash. And let me say, I didn't expect this response, but I'm very proud, but most humbled to have received the Lifetime Achievement Award. I've preached to the choir a lot of times and said, let's give these things to people when they're still alive. Let's don't wait till they die and they're 6 foot under before we recognize something. And so I was told I was heard. So
Definitely.
I don't do all of this volunteering and things like that to get an award for it. I do it because I feel like it's my civic duty to do what I can while I have the opportunity here on this earth. But it's a great honor to me. So, but let's talk trash.
Right.
The Clean County Commission held another successful spring litter cleanup in April on the 15th. And we collected a lot of things from all over the county, actually. But there was a few glitches, and it was done so much different than what we'd done in the past. We actually had the people out at the convenience center went out and picked up the bags this year. And there were a lot of glitches, but we're going to overcome those in the future by working together a little more closely than what we did. Well, we had about 20 groups that gathered and collected a large amount of litter from the roadways this year. No household trash, nothing from the attics and nothing from the garages and sheds. It was all from the litter, and I appreciate the fact that Barbara and Sue came out and helped us that day. But we had, I don't have a complete report as far as the number collected and all that, but I think we only had 48 tires, which is a different story. The Oak Tree Hunt Club brought in over 1,000 pounds of stuff that they had collected up in the Stonehouse district, but I don't really have a total calling on that. But all the volunteers did a great job, not only collecting the litter on them, but they picked up a lot of recyclables also. And just an example, one group turned in only 3 bags of litter off the road, but they picked up 35 glass bottles to feed the purple monster. OI's a glass recycle project. So that's nice, because it was nice of them to pick all that stuff out of those bags of glitter, because that could just went into the landfill, but this way it was able to recycle it for a better purpose. But to show our appreciation, we're going to hold a picnic on June 17th at the Will Barnes Shelter in Veterans Park. As you know, Will Barnes was instrumental on the Clean County Commission, and be watching for your invitation to this. And if you don't see it, please let me know, and I'll get you on my list, because I want, and I know that a lot of people have said that you all couldn't come at one time, but by golly, I'll plant you in different places so you can all be there. and then I'll contend with anybody that wants to say something about it. I'll try. Anyway, the James City Ruatan Club is going to be presenting a graduating senior with the Jim Robertson. As you all know, Jim Robertson, I started on that committee with him in 1979, and Will Barnes Scholarship Award of $1,000 at that same event. So, and he's done shut me off.
You're okay.
Well, I'm going to finish anyway. Anyway, we've given out a lot of smoke stands, and I want to let you know that businesses in town need to have a better appearance than with all these cigarettes stubs that's out there. And so, because cigarette litter is one of the most difficult to control, and it's a $250 fine. But we're trying to give out these smoke stands to different businesses to help with that, control that. Thank you for hearing me, and thank you for cutting me off. And he told me he was, but anyway, and thank you all for everything that you've said tonight. I'm appreciative of everything that you've said and all your support. May you have a blessed day, and let's go out and clean up this trash.
There you go. And this award, this Lifetime Achievement Award will be named after Peg, so it'll continue on for the next recipient, and so it'll be something that we'll keep going. So thank you, and thank you for all your efforts and everything you've done for the community. We very much appreciate it. All right, our next speaker card is Andrew Carson.
Kaysen, I think. Andrew Kaysen, I think.
Is it Kaysen? Oh, yeah, Kaysen. No R.
Okay, common mistake. I'm Andy Kaysen. I live in 3205 Aaron Thistle, and I'm a teacher at Jamestown High School, and I'm the treasurer of WJCA, representing a lot of the teachers in WJCC. I'm here to ask, and you can imagine why I'm here, is that we need the $2 million that you guys have kept set aside in the budget. We need them regardless if the state comes through, because we desperately need qualified and diverse teachers and staff to service our students, to make sure they get the learning that they need. Accreditation is on the line. Retaining professionals is on the line. Our students' future is on the line here. It's May, it's SOLs, it's a very stressful time at many different schools as we are desperately trying to make up for missed learning during the pandemic. And I can tell you the attitude at many buildings is dismal. Many people are jumping ship. We're talking about jumping ship. And of course, we don't have a good idea about how many are going to jump ship because contracts haven't been given out yet. People haven't signed on the dotted line yet. And I can imagine how that's going to turn out this year. I know Richmond has a lot to do with some of our frustration. However, even if Richmond comes through with some of the things that are in line for educators, I think we're still going to need this $2 million. Our employees, every single employee, not just teachers, I have to stress that. I know there was a big stress on teachers at the last joint meeting and the last meeting, but it's not just teachers. Our instructional assistants are hurting. Our bus drivers are few and far between. Students need to get back at a reasonable hour. That's a quality of life issue. And I need to point out the fact that our schools are one of the largest employers. I don't see anywhere else where this money, which we already have, should go other than schools. One thing that bugged me from the last meeting was the constant stressing on the 100% above SOQ funding. I feel like there needs to be some education on SOQ funding. SOQs are literally less, for us in our LCI, less than half. Well, it's a half of bare minimum. So we're expected to pay a little less than half. No, a little bit more than half than bare minimum. Sorry, I got the numbers flipped around. The state is paying less than half of a bare minimum. And if, as I believe Dr. McGlennon said last meeting, that the state has reduced that bare minimum that they think a school system may need, right? Since the 2008 recession. We're still living under the austerity of a recession a decade ago. And I mean, the economy's been booming since then, but yet, you know, Richmond, again, we're throwing Richmond under the bus as an easy target. But SOQ funding, 100% of SOQ funding is not really that significant, especially when you compare it to other counties with similar LCIs. I believe this information was given during the presentation in the December meeting. And if we want to just focus on just one set of numbers, I can have a couple of numbers here. Fauquier County, they fund their schools at 55% of their county budget. Albemarle County funds their schools at 59%. Where has James City County gone this year? Well, we've dropped from 47% from last year to 46%. So we're not even getting the share of the same share of funding. And so I don't think it's fair to brag about 100% SOQ funding. I'm sorry. I couldn't stay silent about that. That was gnawing on me since the last meeting. So please, we need this. And I understand public safety, those guys, they need it too. And to be honest with you, I would be standing up here and advocating for more benefits for those guys too. I think, if you would invest in some people, maybe you guys wouldn't have so many "we're hiring" signs as well. We got to treat people with respect and with dignity. And we have to treat working families the way they ought to be treated. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Jacobowski.
Hello, everybody. Scott, Administrator, Michael, Board. I'm the chairman of the Historical Commission. I think you all know that. I'm here to speak to the Historic Commission budget that's been submitted. We didn't do this last year, which was unfortunate. So briefly, what's happened in the history of James City County since last year, we recently lost a platinum opportunity to save one of the oldest houses from the early 1800s, the house that had the first indoor plumbing in it, that belonged to one Colonel Benjamin Ewell, who was the longest term president of the College of William and Mary, that stayed there and got the college opened after he kept going to Senate for years up in Richmond, asking for money and finally got it. So we have a college there today because of Colonel Benjamin Ewell. Unfortunately, once we looked into it, I had the same house mover that moved the Bray School from William and Mary to go look at the house to move it to a location somewhere else in the county that I met with the county attorney on. And it was found that the house had been demolished. We found that a permit was issued. Again, it's a communication thing. Unfortunately, building and permits issued a permit. By the time that we got onto it, the house was already down, which is extremely unfortunate. So we have another opportunity, and this is the Stone House of Stonehouse. Our resident archaeologist, Alan Outlaw, I know all of you know Alan, has been working on this project for years. We are aware that there is an original foundation somewhere out in that area. We have found stones that were typically used as ballast on ships to come over that people had reclaimed and taken out there. So we've got some of the stones out of the woods. There's been some poking around, but we put in for the budget for $22,000 last year for a reason. The reason was that's the cost of hiring a geotech engineer to use ground penetrating radar to locate Stonehouse, which somewhere between the 16th and 18th century, probable modifications, as you know, has happened over 200 years, but it is really right now the last identifiable antiquity in James City County. Y'all know CW has a lot of restoration. There's very few buildings in Williamsburg or in James City County that date back to the 16 and 1700s. This is one, and what we'd like to do is find it. So we couldn't spend $11,000 that we were granted last year to do that because that would buy half of the ground penetrating radar. No contractor is going to do the work for 50%. And I don't think it was fair to y'all that nobody came up and explained it to you last year. Otherwise, the outcome and the approval may have been different and we would have been well on our way to find Stonehouse. So we're asking for the $22,000 again, and now you know the reason why. So we didn't want you to think, well, heck, we gave them $11,000 last year and nothing happened. So I wanted to explain why, and I'm available for questions if anybody has any. I can stay for the budget hearing if necessary. I don't think it probably is. Is it? No. So therefore, does anybody have any questions about that?
Mark, we don't do a answer question back and forth during this time. It's a chance for public to speak and tell us what's on their mind.
I'm with you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
anyway, I'm finished. Thanks.
Thanks
for your
Mark.
time.
Appreciate it. Hey, Lynn Perrin.
Hello, my name is Lynn Parm. I live in 634 Chelsea Place, Newport News, Virginia. And not only am I a proud social studies teacher at Jamestown, I am the president of WJCA, the local education union for WJCC. With a worsening teacher shortage, both in our state and nationally, competitive pay has become more important than ever, and not just in teaching, but in all professions in the education discipline. As a state, according to the Economic Policy Institute, shows Virginia has the third least competitive teacher pay in the country when compared to other fields that require a similar level of education. I know that when it comes to funding, that being an elected official by James City County is not an easy job, and it may not be easy solving the budget for a department like ours that has many layers within our budget of needs. But I know that all of us anticipating on our state legislator by the end of June should not be a plausible decision. I know that their delay will cause a hindrance to all other local divisions because our division has to put out contracts soon. And with this delay can cause an issues of retaining positions that will be needed for this year and years to come. Our budget of needs is focusing on a variety of things. Number one, especially recruitment and retention. Number two, sustaining needed positions that we needed due to the pandemic. and of course the increase of student needs, and supporting a diverse of student needs. Those needs include IEPs, which are individualized education plans to help any student who needs academic help to achieve their academic success. Other needs also include our multilingual students, which we're going to be getting in a huge increase next year, which means we need translators. We need our help for our teachers to help those students to achieve that same equitable academic success for all of the students in the school division. Needs with behavioral, emotional, and mental, as my other colleague mentioned, it is May, and we are seeing an increase in behavioral issues and tiredness in our staff. As a school, we are to provide these resources and needs for our student, but resources we can get through funding, which is why funding is crucial. Please note that the statements and comments that we bring are not complaints, but points of information to provide clarity in what is happening in our schools. We have one school who was at risk of accreditation in the red. We have others in the yellow. I don't want to see many more go in the red next year, because if they're in the red, it could decrease the families who want to come in the school division based on our sole achievement as a premier school status. And lastly, please know that not all of our staff positions in WJC are SOQ funded by the state, which means standards of quality. That could include our aides, a certain amount of school counselors, a certain amount of those who work in administration staff. So when our division provides a specific budget for raises, they include everything in that raise with the help of the state and locality funding. As a community, our biggest concern and question should be on how do we keep our staff in WJCC, especially our veteran teachers. Because the raise in student behavior, the raise in security that we are seeing as staff are obligated to help in, and a raise in added academic needs from the pandemic to help our students does not equal the factor in what we are paid. We as a union do hold our school board accountable as we continue to advocate for what we need in our classroom, but as I mentioned again, please know what this budget means to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Arus Sardi, did I pronounce that correct? Marco. That's all right. No, not a problem. All right.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Marco Sardi. I live at 4008 Governor Square in James City County. I am the vice president of WJCEA, a teacher at James Blair Middle School, and a taxpayer in the county. I mentioned that last one because it seems to be rather important to this board, and I figured that making it known that I pay my fair share into the system that I'm advocating for would help validate my complaint as not just another one from a teacher. And believe me, as much as you are tired of hearing from us, we are also tired. After 7 months of looking into our needs, hearing from the city council, meeting with the school board, and yourselves, I too am tired to be back here on hopefully what is a final day to once again ask you to value this community's future. Our bus drivers are also tired. We can't offer a competitive wage to fill in the gaps in our staffing, so many of them will be busing students home until 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. Our custodians are also tired. My head custodian at James Blair works until 8, 9, or 10, 11 o'clock at night, cleaning 2 different buildings since they can't find someone willing to work both. And our special education teachers are tired because they're 30% over their capacity, which is the minimum the state requires, since they have to balance those throughout the day. But we're told that that's acceptable since we do it for the kids. And I do. I show up to my job each day because I love it, and I would never want to do anything else. And I love working with children, and I would put the devotion of our staff, teacher or otherwise, on par with anywhere else in the state. But we can't eat devotion, and the solution simply cannot be to work a second or third job, as many teachers that I know personally have to do to make ends meet. You're tired of hearing from us, but we're also tired of having to work 50 to 60 hours a week to have to then come here and explain why we would like to change that situation. There's a senior assistant in our division who I know personally. She's 66 years old and does a fantastic job at running the day-to-day outcomes of our school and as our chief financial officer in my building. She can't retire, not because she hasn't been wise with her money, but because they simply can't find someone willing to do her job as well as she does it. She arrives before I do and leaves after I do, and she makes less than I do. And I don't think that's very fair. But she works tirelessly, and hers is just one of hundreds of stories throughout our division. If you think this is just a school board issue, they can only work with what you give them. And yes, there are always areas to improve, and I assure you, I will be advocating to them just as hard as I am to you to get them to allocate that money wisely where it needs to be. But I cannot have that conversation unless we have all of the cards on the table. A 1% difference in your budget is not a small amount of money, and I know I'm asking for a lot when I am advocating for that $2 million to bring us up to a possible 7% raise. But that is the difference between choosing a higher class size or higher insurance rates, or between pulling an extra shift after work or getting an extra hour with the kids at home. I don't know if you saw the last work session from our school board, but we have a lot of vacancies already, and it's May. They're either leaving the profession due to burnout, or they're going to where they feel valued, like York or Gloucester. That extra $2 million will help keep our county competitive with similar raises we're seeing across neighboring divisions. And believe me, if you can visit our schools, you will see that it is money well needed, not wanted. I encourage you to ask yourself, when the last time you saw in the buildings the people whose lives you are affecting so immensely? I challenge you to see the frantic look in teachers' eyes at this time of year as they try to prepare for SOLs with the state breathing down our neck for higher standards. Watch how hard our support staff works, and then you may gladly tell me that you're tired of hearing our complaints. I thank you for your time and ask you to consider your decision today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speaker cards? Okay, I'll go ahead and close public comment. And there's nothing on our consent calendar for today. Next, I'll go into public hearings, and our PC rep is Tim O'Connor. Tim, I saw you're, there he is. Thank you, sir. Thank you for spending time with us this evening. First one is ORD-22-0003, amendments to the calculation of residential development density. John, you're up. Oh, you're already there. Thanks, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. At the March 8th, 2022 Board of Supervisors meeting, there is a request to bring forward an initiating resolution to consider amending how residential density is calculated with a direction to explore using a net acreage calculation. The board adopted the initiating resolution at its April 12th, 2022 meeting, and at its January 24th, 2023 business meeting, the board provided further guidance that the intent of the initiating resolution is to avoid pockets of high-density residential development and to reduce impacts to the environment. Currently, the EO, Economic Opportunity District, utilizes a net acreage approach, while the R1, Limited Residential, R2, General Residential, R3, Residential Redevelopment, R4, Residential Planned Community, R5, Multifamily Residential, PUD, Planned Unit Development, and MU, Mixed Use Districts, along with the Residential Cluster Development Overlay District, utilize a stepped approach to calculate density. The stepped approach allows properties with lower percentages of non-developable areas to calculate density using the total area of the parcel, while properties with higher percentages of non-developable areas calculate density with the developable area plus a certain percentage of the total parcel area. The zoning ordinance currently defines developable areas as the total area of the parcel minus the non-developable areas, which include areas in the resource protection area, areas within floodplains, and areas with steep slopes. The A1 general agricultural, R6 low-density residential, and R8 rural residential districts do not currently have density requirements except for cluster subdivisions in the A1 district. Policy guidance from the comprehensive plan includes the recommended density ranges for the land use designations, recognizing that residential growth should be directed to occur inside the PSA where there is greater efficiency for public services, goals for providing opportunities for affordable housing, and having a consistent character and compatibility between adjacent developments. The net density approach could potentially reduce the residential capacity in the PSA, increase growth pressure on areas outside the PSA, reduce the efficiency of public services, and reduce opportunities for affordable housing. The net density approach could, however, result in adjacent developments having a consistent intensity of development if they are within the same zoning district. To meet the direction of the initiating resolution, staff has prepared draft ordinance language which would implement a net acreage approach by defining net density as the number of dwelling units defining net density as the number of dwelling units divided by the developable area of the parcel, and revising the density calculation method within each zoning district. For the A1 and R8 districts, the draft language includes new sections to apply a net density calculation for major subdivisions, as well as updating the density requirements for clusters in the A1 district to reference net density. The rural lands designation in the comprehensive plan recommends a density of 1 unit per 20 acres, but does not specify that it should be based on net acreage. Previous ordinance revisions implemented a 20-acre minimum lot size in these districts to be consistent with the rural lands designation. Staff finds the established minimum lot size provisions adequately ensure that the character of residential development in the A1 and R8 districts is consistent with the comprehensive plan and does not recommend revising these districts. For the R6 district, the draft language includes a new section to apply a net density calculation for major subdivisions. The R6 district requires lots to be a minimum of 1 acre in size, and all land zoned R6 is part of existing platted subdivisions, which at this point are mostly built out, and the district is not envisioned for future development and remains in place largely to govern those existing subdivisions. Staff finds that there be no substantial benefit from implementing density in the R6 district and does not recommend revising the district. For the R1, R2, R3, R4, R5, and PUD districts, along with the Residential Cluster Development Overlay District, the draft ordinance includes revisions to existing sections pertaining to density to implement a net density calculation. The low-density residential and moderate-density residential comprehensive plan designations recommend densities based on gross acreage, meaning that a gross acreage calculation would be most consistent with these designations in the comprehensive plan, while a net density approach would likely result in adjacent developments having a more uniform intensity of development. Staff finds that the current stepped approach serves as a compromise between these considerations. For the MU district, the draft ordinance includes revisions to implement a net density calculation with the existing density section. The EO district currently utilizes net density. However, the draft language includes revisions so that the language would be consistent with the other districts if net density is implemented. The mixed use and economic opportunity, Moortown Road, Hill Pleasant Farm area, comprehensive plan designations recommend densities based on net acreage. Staff finds that using net density in the MU and EO districts would be consistent with the comprehensive plan and recommends revising these districts. The policy committee considered this item at its January 12th and February 23rd meetings and recommended implementing net density in the R1, R2, R3, R4, R5, PUD, MU, and EO districts, as well as the Residential Cluster Overlay District, but not in the A1, R8, and R6 districts. The Planning Commission considered this item at its April 5th meeting and recommended denial of the proposed ordinance by a vote of 3-2. Should the board recommend utilizing the net density approach for one or more of the districts involved, draft ordinance language has been provided for your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have at this time. Thank you.
Questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a quick one. What were removed? A1, R8, and what?
R6.
R6.
Correct.
Thank you. I had spoken, well, I'm still chatting with Mr. Holt the other day. Do you have just a second that you could pop up? I just wanted to confirm that we had talked about how many potential remaining lots that are not affected and are grandfathered in. I think that's important for some folks in our real estate community to know.
Sure. So much like many of the ordinance amendments that we do, those developments that have already been approved certainly would have the ability to claim that they are vested under any changes in the ordinance. And so when we look through, certainly that's going to include all of our master planned communities. That's very frequent that those master plans already list out a number of units and typically a number of densities as well. So those are going to include communities such as the Stonehouse Plan Unit Development, Colonial Heritage, Ford's Colony, Kings Mill, just to name a few. And certainly those subdivisions that already have approved construction plans that are already in the pipeline. And so, as you all may recall, every couple of years when we update the comprehensive plan, we try to estimate that number based on our most recent comprehensive plan. The number of lots that are already approved, master plan communities and other by right subdivisions with approved construction plans, total just over 6,700 lots that have approval and are already in the pipeline for the county based on current estimated years of absorption. Could be anywhere from 13 to 17 years worth of new development that we could see that's already been contained in those areas. You know, we have the idea that should this ordinance be amended tonight or approved tonight, it would most likely really affect those new parcels that have not yet been developed. We included in our previous notifications, this will not affect lots that already have single-family homes on them. They're not large enough to be subdivided out, and as proposed, it would not affect minor subdivisions either. It's really future major subdivisions that would be most impacted by this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I spoke with you this morning. Either one is fine, but I just wanted to clarify that I had asked about possibly looking at, because of the affordable housing issue, as you start to work through, should this policy take place, possibly looking for some type of bonus density to developers, if they're looking at putting in affordable housing, what that number, I mean, I know so often when we were talking about it's 6, I'll put in 6 units, that's affordable. But if we can just keep that in mind as we work through this.
Certainly will.
Okay.
And that brings a question to my mind that I was kind of curious about, because I often hear this question about, this is going to be damaging to affordable housing. When we think about those major subdivisions, when was the last time we had one that really had a significant workforce housing component to it? I mean, I just don't think the market really supports it.
Not right now.
Not right now. It's been a number of years. I mean, we'd have to go back to something like the at Williamsburg Crossing, say the Promenade, or say Villages at Candle Station, which have been built out for a number of years. Those are the ones that would be sort of most recent that had some percentage of units within them, for sure.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Tim O'Connor. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. How are you this evening?
Very good, sir.
Connor.
All right, there's a lot of paper for tonight, so. And I'm sorry you're stuck with me. I think Mr. Polster was intending to punish me, or perhaps you, by sending me to speak tonight. So, but I do appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Planning Commission and hope to represent them ably on this topic tonight. As presented in the staff report, the Planning Commission had a split vote of 3-2, not in favor of recommending the draft ordinance for consideration this evening. Clearly, from Policy Committee to Planning Commission, this topic has been debated quite extensively and is probably more than anything else during my tenure on the Planning Commission. I call your attention to the minutes of the meeting of and the Policy Committee minutes that were included in your package, which reflected the recommendation of the Policy Committee to the Planning Commission, indicating no changes should be made to the majority of these districts when calculating density. So, while all are in agreement with many of the goals of the 2045 Comprehensive Plan to preserve rural lands, there are concerns by some about changing density in all residential districts, primarily within the PSA. Some of the concerns expressed included reduced density in the PSA will maintain or increase pressure on development in rural lands. The stepped approach offers a blend of net and gross density. The absence of a housing opportunity policy, which does not provide a vehicle for increased density to provide workforce and affordable housing. The absence of a clustering ordinance does not provide a method to attain density in the rural lands to minimize land disturbance. And finally, one of the pieces that was part of our comprehensive plan were complete communities. And we had great support for that in the community feedback for for complete communities inside the boundaries of the PSA. So those are the highlights, and happy to answer any questions if the board has any.
Questions? Done. Good job.
Thank you very much.
All right, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. And our first speaker, Linda Rice.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm Linda Rice, 2394 Forge Road, and I am speaking as an individual tonight. Although my organization, of which I'm president, Friends of Forge Road in Toano, did send all of you comments reference this particular project. But I'm not here tonight to repeat what you probably have already read. But I did want to bring up a couple of things. Reference this burgeoning development that is either come or will be coming in the Upper County. And I'm just going to, bear with me, read through a few statistics. As you know, we've got Blaine Landing under development, 119 units of apartments and condominiums. We have the Hazelwood development, which although is not residential, is going to be a huge industrial footprint in the Upper County, as well as a portion of that, including mixed use. 328 acres industrial, I think about 77 acres mixed use. The Hankins proposed development, which is the property adjacent to the current Whitehall and also near Hickory Neck Church. And that current proposal is for 582 units, 443 which are going to be, which are proposed to be single-family dwellings, and 139 townhouses. And then I'm also going to, I am going to come to the point. And then I'm also going to come to the intersection of Forge Road and Richmond Road. I drive that daily. I used to drive it more frequently with the horse trailer. And I think the vast majority of people that live on Forge Road now or off of Little Creek Dam or wherever, Diascun possibly, will tell you when you approach that intersection now, in some cases you're really holding your breath a bit, hoping, especially if you have a horse trailer, that you're going to get across that median without any type problem. So where I'm going with all of this is that there are a lot of pressures right up there in a relatively small geographic area. And if you start looking at, which I've done, added the number of units with Blaine Landing, the number of units proposed for Hankins, that comes up to 691 units. And then if you multiply that times the average household number, which is about 2.5 people, if you will, per household, that gives us, with those two developments, as I said, one active, one proposed, 1,728 more residents. Now, that may seem like not perhaps the heftiest number, but when you start thinking of car traffic that could be associated with that number of new residents, it's a bit overwhelming, because you start having not only the problem with that intersection of Forge and Richmond, but you have all this traffic emptying up again until mainly Route 60. I know Blaine Landing is near Croker, but some of that is going to wind up on Route 60 as well. So I would say that one of the reasons that we were gratified to see that you guys are considering a change in the way you calculate density is we think it's probably one of the few tools that you have in your toolbox to try to better manage this. And as some of the people have previously mentioned, along with this additional growth, along with the transportation issues that are going to be coming in, you've got the impact on the schools, which is huge. And I know the schools take up, as you guys well know, the largest part of the budget. So I guess in summary, what I'm saying is, first of all, thank you for considering this proposal. I'll be finished in a minute. And secondly, this proposed ordinance. And secondly, I would say it's really going to be important that as you deliberate this, that you keep considering these cumulative impacts.
Thank you, Ms. Rice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dean McLean.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name's Dean McLean, and I'm here representing the Coastal Virginia Building Industry Association. You probably used to know us as the Peninsula Builders Association and the Tidewater Builders Association. They were combined. We're about approximately a 700-member trade association representing the building development, primarily shelter industry. The same as big as the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission. We have everything from the Eastern Shore to James City County to Virginia Beach to over to Southampton County. I think that there's nothing more challenging, controversial sometimes in that calculation of residential development density. And we understand the growth pressures you all are under. And I sent you an email, and I'm sure you probably read it last night. Affordable housing, workforce housing, it's an issue, not only here. I'm going to tell you, it's an issue in every one of the localities. Obviously, I think even there's a task force on the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission looking into the issue. And there's no easy answers, but there are answers that we have to keep on looking 10, 15 years out. And it's because density, well, personally, in my opinion, I've been around the development business for about 30 years now, and people are against two things, density and sprawl, and somewhere nirvana is found. So we hope that you will consider our comments regarding the impact upon workforce housing and property owners in primarily we understand in your service districts, because that's where you're trying to focus your growth. Every locality tries to do it the same way. Suffolk has the same issues of in Chesapeake, trying to focus the growth. And it goes all the way up around and the Richmond localities, et cetera. So please consider that. We respect everything you all do. You all have a very welcoming, this is my first time speaking here, and a very nice, setup here. Thank you.
Thank you. John Richardson. Welcome.
My name's John Richardson. I own property at 1715 Jolly Pond Road, and I also represent Richardson Holding. I'm coming to you tonight as I watch the April 5th meeting that you guys have around this issue, and I've come to you basically to cut to the point and ask you not to pass this. I have a slightly different perspective than some here in the room. My perspective is this. My grandfather, I used to be so proud growing up here. My grandfather, I was told, was the second largest landholder in James City County behind Anheuser-Busch. My family has been here since the start of this county. We're working members in the county. We've added. My grandfather ran a sawmill that many of you may be familiar with off of Centerville Road. And it disheartens me that I see these changes as I look at my family and how, they're working class citizens within the county who've contributed for years, paid taxes for years. These taxes have paid for this infrastructure to support development within the PSA, and now growth has gotten on their doorstep. And it's on their doorstep, and many of them can reap the benefits of this growth getting there, and now we have this. I tell you, I watched the April 5th meeting, and there was a person that spoke, and they gave their address, and I think they live here in Kings Mill. When I was growing up, Kings Mill was being developed by Anheuser-Busch. All of this was being developed by Anheuser-Busch. She had moved from Northern Virginia 7 years ago. 7 years. Our family's probably been here at least 357 years. Okay? Our family deserves the opportunity and not to be restricted by this. We've already been encumbered. We're the largest holders within the Yarmouth AFD. The resolution that's happened recently has cut us back from 1 house on 3 acres to 1 house per 20 acres. We've always looked to sustain development within the AFD, so this came to us as a bit of a surprise. I would say there's been conversation here about preventing suburban sprawl, about affordable housing. I have yet to understand how reducing density affects in a positive way affordable housing. And reducing density, look to the Northern Virginia example. Reducing density does nothing but entice suburban sprawl. This being said, I do want you guys to reflect on the fact that the county has grown through the years. This land used to be part of the Kings Mill Plantation. It is now Kings Mill Residential Community. My great-great-grandparents are in a private cemetery that sits on Ford's Colony, right? I hear people that come here, come to Kings Mill, come to Ford's Colony, come to Governor's Land, and they're here now, and they want to drive around and they don't want anything to change, not in my backyard. And I understand that, but they are here now, they've come, they are actually leading to the incremental growth within the county. And I just ask you not to change and amend this and not to hurt the families who have been here and have contributed for so long. Thank you.
Thank you. Hunter Taylor.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Hunter Taylor. I live at 999 Jolly Pond. I come to this evening with 2 perspectives. One, I'm a large property owner. I own 169 acres on Jolly Pond. And somebody that cares deeply about conservation, land conservation, and the environment. And I just partook in taking my property through the AFD process. and incorporating it into the AFD earlier this year. That's an excellent program that gives an incentive to conserve property. And those are the type of programs that we need to be thinking about as we talk about density and subdivisions, specifically within the PSA. But the other perspective I come to tonight is as I'm a builder. I own a small private home building company. We build in Hampton Roads, Charlottesville, and Virginia, or in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I've been watching and I've been paying close attention over the last couple of years of how the county handles land use. And there's been, as we went through the comprehensive plan in 2021, there was a lot of conversation around protection of rural lands, a lot of conversation about the proposed amendment to the 1 in 20 acres. There was transparency there. Throughout that entire process, never once did anyone speak about trying to limit growth within the PSA. It was actually, we're going to concentrate growth within the PSA. And then this ordinance, this proposal, Mr. Eisenhower, you asked the staff to look at this in early 2022. And then on May 31st, I get a letter in my mailbox letting me know there's a planning commission meeting 4 days later, the following week. This is a complicated issue. Not a lot of people can understand it if they don't follow this or they're not in the business. There hasn't been a whole lot of conversation, not nearly the amount that there was around the rural lands protection. And so I don't think the general public really knows what we're discussing here tonight, and that's a problem. But to get into some of the specifics, I'm not quite sure the underlying goal of this ordinance. If it's growth, there's ways to handle growth. If it's environmental protection, there's environmental protection. But it's been unclear, and I've done a lot of research trying to understand what the ultimate underlying goal is for this. Let's talk about growth. Reading the comprehensive plan, in 2018, our current population was about 24,000. It's showing that through 2045, our population should be projected to be around 120,000. That's based on a study from a consultant that takes analytics across the country. In 2018, there were 324 new home closings in James City County. In 2019, there were 329 new home closings in James City County. In 2020, there were 432 new home closings in James City County. And in 2021, there were 343. 2022 numbers are hard to get quite at the moment, but last year was a down year during the supply chain issues. And so let's just assume that it's about what 2021 was, 343 closings. That's 1,790 closings in James City County over the last 5 years. The average household size is 2.5 individuals. So that's 4,400 people over 5 years. There's no way we hit 120,000 people by 2045, especially when, if you look at any submarket within the county, there's less than 1 month of inventory of homes for people to purchase. So it was stated that there were 6,700 lots that are entitled in the county. Well, they don't work. That's the same argument that the federal government makes about mining for oil and permits. Those lots still have to be sustainable, and they still have to make a return if you develop them. And so 6,700 lots doesn't mean anything. Is there a demand for workforce housing? There's absolutely demand, but it's impossible to develop a lot and put it on the ground and build a home and offer it at 80% AMI. You can't do it. It costs $93,000 in regulations alone, from entitlement to CO, to develop and build a home. You can't do that and have a buyer qualify at 80% AMI. When the county had the IHOP program, that was a decent program, but that didn't work because that bonus density gets baked into the land valuation of the sale, of the valuation of the land up front. So there's ways that we can attack these things. There's ways we can control growth, protect the environment, provide affordable housing, but this is not it.
Thank you. All right, any other speaker cards? No, sir. All right, I'll go ahead and close this public hearing and look to the board for direction, motion, or discussion.
I'd like to kick off the discussion. If anybody else wants to discuss before we get to it, I would be happy to entertain that. You know, what drove this in my mind was some pretty egregious examples of property that was substantially 70, 80% non-developable. And even with the staggered or tiered system we had, what it gave a false sense of what you would want to put in there. Let's just take, for example, low density residential, just low density residential. So 1 unit per acre, up to 4 units per acre, and as you get beyond 1 unit, up to 2, 3, and 4, that is predicated on the benefit it provides to the citizens of the county. So that density per acre sounds good until you actually start taking a look at what's physically on the ground that can be built upon. And what we were getting is we were getting something that said, all right, we got 1 unit per acre average. Whereas if you go take a look at what was actually buildable, it's like 5 or 6 units per acre. Why? Because that's the only part of it that's developable, and we're going to cram it all into that one little tiny spot. You know, when I asked the question, because I don't think I hadn't thought about it much until this started occurring. I asked the question of staff, how much of the county is non-developable? It's about 35%. We got a lot of wetlands. We got a lot of steep slopes, wetlands, RPA, stuff like that. And we've gotten some pretty bad reports about what's happening to the environment because of some of the density of development that we've put in. I look at it, if you want to see how big James City County is, I think it's 144 square miles. Well, if you want to really see how big James City County is, look at the water area. It goes all the way to the other side of the James River. Doesn't do much for us because you can't build on it unless you're Dominion. And then you can put towers out there. But it gives us a false sense of what the actual impact is going to be. Now, I'm not saying that we don't want to have density. You may want to have another area like Newtown where you're going to have a higher density. And you're going to have somebody will come in and say, I want to develop this piece of property and I want to make it mixed use, and I want to have some apartment buildings, and I want to have and so we may get up to 8, 10, 12, 18 units per acre. If you want to see what it looks like, look what's happened over in the remaining parcel over in Newtown. There was a piece of property that was supposed to be done for a hotel. It's all, the whole parcel is all developable. About 2 acres. And so now, because of the way we did our zoning and everything when we did Newtown, it's a by right development, and they're putting 104 apartments. That's 50 units an acre. I don't think anybody who had that in mind when we were talking about Newtown. We were talking much lower densities. So the net result is we've gotten a lot higher densities in places than we really thought we were getting. I don't mind having density where it's appropriate. And I'd be quite honest with you, I think that affordable housing and density are tied. They're very clearly tied, because we are not going to be able to build housing that you can purchase and have it remain affordable. It may be affordable for the first buyer, but the second buyer, it's no longer affordable. Where we find is where we have apartment type buildings or townhomes where we can have the tax credits. It's about the only way we can get people into some of these affordable projects. And unfortunately, that's one of those things that we tend to get pushback on. But it's and if we did try to do more of it, we don't have the physical capability to provide what we really totally truly need. So I've come to look at the affordable housing argument as simply one that's essentially, by market forces, unwinnable. We do the best we can, and that's what we have to do. So this whole thing was driven in my opinion, by the ability to put something on a piece of property and call it one thing and have it be another. And I think it ought to be reflected in what physically goes on the piece of property that's developable. And I'll shut up and let anybody else speak before I make a motion.
Anyone else?
I'd just say that I supported Mr. Eisenhower's proposal to bring this before us for two reasons. One is that it does provide us with some opportunities to think seriously about the environmental impact of development that's happening, and the other is related to the question of the appropriate location for density and the ability to recognize that market forces are really not going to make workforce housing be a realistic possibility in many of the circumstances we confront right now, unless we do something to try to again, I think tying density to the benefit of affordable housing is something that offers some hope.
I look at it too on the traffic and the situations we have in the county right now with traffic just getting through the county. And being on HR TAC, there's no state money, no state funding. You're not going to get it. What little you get, you're competing with everybody because they're in the same situation we're in. We have around 77,000 residents in James City County right now. With what Paul just said, with the 6,700, if you do that times 3, because 2.5 would be a little more difficult, so just round it up to 3. Some people might have 5, some might have 2. So if you do 3, that's 20,100. And then what is coming up on the books that possibly will come up, you're adding another 1,728. So you're at 98,828 citizens. Now, they're not going to be built tomorrow. But if we don't plan on roads and infrastructure and schools and police and fire and EMS, we just can't keep building. And I'm fine with building and be able to utilize your land and that's why. But we've also got to be able to pay for it. And by building more homes, you're going to have to raise your taxes. No ifs, ands, buts about it. They don't cover. They cover a portion, but they don't cover everything. They don't cover new firehouses, new schools, and everything else that are going to come with all the rest of the people that will come, not only including traffic. If anybody tries to go through Lightfoot on a Saturday, they'll understand what I'm saying. It's terrible to go through there, and we need to do something about that. We have traffic lights we need to put up in 3 locations. And Sadler's, Sue Sadler's, and Ruth's, and mine, and all need traffic lights. And that's 1.5 million. We can't afford that right now. We're trying to put in year by year, but we can't afford that. So we've got to look at some way and something. And of course, it's not going to be pleasant for some people, and it might be for others, and others may say it's well what you need to do. But we have to look at not only today, but we have to look out into the future. And the future is that more houses are going to be coming in our area, which I agree with, and I welcome them. There's going to be more traffic, but how much more? You know, before I got on this board, it was a boom going on, and we were building like crazy in James City County. And we're eating up every spot that could be eaten up and sticking houses after houses. And it was normally done, at first it was done by local builders. They were in here doing it. There's not but a few local builders left. The big builders came in, ate up the land, developed it, and whether they stayed or left, I don't know. But I know one thing, they developed stuff that we weren't used to developing here in James City County. And I'm not blaming them. It's the way they do business, and that's their job, and that's how they run things. But at the same time, you're getting a mass bunch of houses. Look at Stonehouse and how many's left up in Stonehouse to do.
3,000.
Yeah, not even including all the other ones that may come online. Well, if we're looking at 98,000 or almost 99,000 possible right now, we have to start planning right now. Those are coming. If we add more, that's even more coming. And I know a lot of the people will sit up here and maybe 5 or 10 years ago, why didn't that board think about that? And why didn't they do something? And my taxes are too high and I'm moving out, and the heck with James City County. And what do? Then we start having worse schools, worse police, worse, everything goes down. And that's not helping either. So it's a matter of trying to figure out a balance between both. Yes, development, and there will be development, and we encourage new neighbors and all that, and we can't limit the amount of development, but maybe we have smarter developments as we go. And so this is looking at what is a smarter development. We develop a piece of land and it gets developed in James City County, and in about 10 years, I'd say roughly, just my figures, in 10 years, we're applying for SLAP money and everything else to fix the streams that just got torn up when the development went in. And they were guaranteed nothing was going to happen. Well, that money, what we can't get in funding, we got to come back to the citizens and say, well, guess what? Now that that subdivision went in, now that that stream's messed up, now that that area is a problem and we have to fix it, I got to come to y'all and say, we're going to have to raise taxes in order to fix the stream. And y'all be like, well, why didn't you get the developer? Why didn't you change this? Why didn't you change that? And we put things in place to keep that controlled. But at the same time, you're not controlling but so much. So those are the, sitting up at this board, those are the items that we deal with. It's hard to understand. I didn't understand them when I was sitting in there and thought half the boards were crazy at times, and y'all probably think we are. And I wouldn't blame you either way. But, you know, that's a part of life and the way things go. So,
And Mr. Chairman, I just add that, you know, the projections of 120,000 people, which may not now be met by 2045, do suggest that some of the choices that we've made over the last several years have had an impact. They have bent the curve. You don't end growth, but you have a better sense of control over the amount of growth that's occurring, and you have a better opportunity to plan for that.
and I think our biggest thing is up here is not controlling growth. It's managing the developments. You know, because controlling growth sounds like we're only limited X. We're trying to help the developers and the people that have land manage the development as it goes for the betterment of all the citizens in James City County. Any other?
I would just like to add to your point about traffic. That's probably one of the number one complaints that I get from citizens is the traffic, because our corridor, and again, to your point, you can't get to Lowe's on a Saturday, so you got to plan according to the traffic. And with 3,000 more homes or potential homes in the hopper that are already in the master plan development that I have, that's only going to add to it. And I know with, there are new areas coming online up our way already. The Hazelwood property, we got the residential out of there. We got it out. So, and that was one of the reasons why, is that we're filled up. And if we don't, to your point again, I think sometimes we have to make decisions about right now. But this, to me, is a decision for way down the road. It's some long-range planning that we have to be cognizant of, because I'm not in the mood to be raising taxes just because we haven't planned accordingly. And if we did that, well, Lord knows the dam's going to break, because you know we're going to hear about that. So I've been back and forth with this issue for weeks. I've talked with, thank you staff for all your help. I've talked to everybody that I could think of that it could possibly affect. So it's not an easy decision, because I know property owners are affected, but we have to consider the entire county and the effect that it has on all of us. So thank you for everyone's comments. I appreciate your help.
I would just add, please come to Ace in the Route 5 Shopping Center instead of going to
I
Lowe's.
know, we're battling,
York
we're
County.
battling stoplights on who we can pound VDOT to get a stoplight in certain areas. And you can't get the funding from VDOT, nor do we have it. So that's, Ruth and I spend our days in traffic. So.
Yes, we do.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the motion, but I'd like to make one amendment to it because the motion that was put forward by staff basically addressed all of the districts. And after discussion with my fellow board members and with staff, I think it's appropriate for us to remove the A1 and R8 from that and allow that, since that is already being dictated by the 1 for 20, or if you're smaller, 1 for 3, for those zoning categories. So what I would do is move the resolution that we have with the understanding that staff would remove that net density calculation from the A1 and the R8. Is that acceptable to the county attorney as a motion, or do I need to be more
Yes, sir.
specific?
Just to clarify, though, you're moving the ordinance.
I'm moving the ordinance, yes.
So what do we do? What's the R6 portion of that?
The R6 would stay, and because the EO is already there, so the R6 would stay, but the A1 and R8 are the ones that I think
we should remove it as well.
would be removed, so.
So what is the motion then?
The motion is we have the ordinance that's in our package,
Okay.
but they would take the A1
A1,
and R8
out.
net density out.
Good, thank you.
And leave it just at the minimum lot size.
Got a motion on the floor. Roll call, please, sir.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Ms. Sadler.
Aye.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, next is number 2, ORD-22-0004, amendment to the zoning ordinance regarding community recreation facilities in residential districts. Now, how you doing, Paul?
Evening, I'm back.
I know,
I think Paul's going to kick us off.
okay.
I'll get us kicked off. Again, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Good evening. Before you is proposed ordinance amendment 22-0004 regarding community recreation facilities in residential districts. While a staff report and supporting information has been included in your agenda packets, it's staff's understanding there may be a desire by the board to postpone action on this item to an upcoming meeting. As such, pending potential additional discussion and edits, staff would be happy to wait for tonight, and we'll hold on the staff report and the Planning Commission report out, and we can hold those until such later time. As you may need, staff is certainly available for questions. The public hearing has already been advertised for tonight's meeting, so that should be opened, and should the board desire to postpone this item, staff recommends keeping the public hearing open until such time. Thank you very much.
And thank you, and I want to thank you and staff for all the work that's been done in the Planning Commission. I do need to tweak some things, I need to discuss with planning, and I just, to be honest with you, just with the heaviness of this agenda, just did not have time and didn't want to put staff in that type of time crunch either. So if we could open the public hearing, but say, yeah, and we'll come back hopefully in June.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
I'll go ahead and open up public hearing, and if anybody wishes to speak on this item tonight, they may, but if they do, they won't be able to speak at the next time this comes up. So I would suggest, waiting for the next opportunity, but you do have the opportunity today. All right, we'll go ahead and leave that open and move on to our next. ORD-23-0001, amendment to the zoning ordinance regarding vapes and smoke shops.
Mr. Chairman, before you go on, we just need some clarification as to what date you want to postpone that.
What
previous
date would you like, June?
Motion to postpone to.
June, you could give me just 1 second. It would be June 13th.
Do we need a motion for that?
We'll need a motion for June 13th.
thank
Motion
you.
to postpone till
Thank you.
June 13th.
You want to do the motion?
It's okay, she did the motion.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay. That motion on the floor. Roll call.
Ms. Sadler.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Now we're ready.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of
you.
the board. On January 24th, 2023, initiating resolution was adopted to consider possible amendments to the James City County zoning ordinance to require vape and smoke shops to obtain a special use permit. Staff has received numerous calls and from citizens regarding vape and smoke shops in the county. Specifically, citizens have voiced concerns over the locations of these shops in close proximity to schools in the Toano Commercial Historic District. Additionally, staff has received complaints of non-compliant lights on the exterior of windows or buildings and of individuals smoking outside retail stores near other businesses. Staff understands the purpose of the initiating resolution and this ordinance amendment is to define and classify vape and smoke shops as a standalone, specially permitted use, and to ensure all associated or accessory uses are addressed. Uses listed in each zoning district are either permitted by right or permitted by a special use permit. The current zoning ordinance generally permits vape and smoke shops under the retail and service store use category, which includes tobacco and pipe stores. Retail sales of tobacco and pipes are permitted by right in the R4, LB, B1, M1, PUD, MU, EO districts. Should the ordinance be amended to permit or especially permit vape and smoke shops, the existing stores then will become non-conforming. Section 24-629 of the zoning ordinance states that non-conforming uses may continue as they exist when it became non-conforming, provided, however, if any non-conforming use is discontinued for a period of 2 years, it shall lose its non-conforming status. The City of Williamsburg amended their zoning ordinance in January of 2023 to require vape and smoke shops to obtain a special use permit in various commercial districts. Staff surveyed several other localities and found that most permit vape and smoke shops as a general permitted use. Staff presented materials at the March 9th, 2023 meeting of the Policy Committee and recommended the following changes to the ordinance to address this directive. Add new definitions for vape/smoke shop and vape/smoke lounges within Section 24-2 definitions. Amend the existing retail store and shop definition to exclude vape shops and vape smoke lounges within Section 24-2 definition. Remove tobacco and pipe from the retail and service store use categories in the R4, LB, B1, M1, PUD, MU, and EO districts. And then add vape smoke shop and vape smoke lounge as a specially permitted use in the R4, LB, B1, M1, PUD, mixed use, and EO districts. The Policy Committee voted to recommend approval of the proposed changes to the Planning Commission with a few minor additions. Furthermore, the Policy Committee also discussed that they would favor including a compliance review condition to any future special use permit request similar to short-term rentals to address any non-compliant activity. On April 5th, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the ordinance that's been provided to you tonight by a 5-0 vote. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions?
Now, I'd just like to thank you for your help on this. A lot of this arose because of what was going on in Toano. When things go in by right, we don't usually know about it till after the fact. So I appreciate your help in the Planning Commission and Policy Committee for all their additions to this, because I think it's an important thing to have in place to further protect the character of the community. So thank you for your help.
Appreciate that.
Any other questions? I have one question. I think I already know the answer. So if a vape shop is in a building and they decide to relocate and another business comes into that building that is able to run their business, and then would that mean that the 2 years doesn't exist anymore because it's not used for the same thing?
So if we had a smoke vape shop that's existing and they moved out, but then someone a year later wanted to open up in that same location a smoke vape, they would be permitted to do so. But if 2 years span between the one use moving out and when they wanted to come in, then they would be required to get the special use permit.
But what if in between that year, another company moves in that says, say, maybe sells donuts or something? Does that cut that business from having that 2 year?
So if they move out and they go to a different location in James City, that would automatically mean that they would have to get a special use permit within the new location.
Right.
Donut shop moves in, and they're there for 2 years, then a smoke shop could not come back into that location again.
What if that donut shop's only in there for, say, 4 months, and they move out, and then another vape shop wants to move in? Can the vape shop operate without a special use permit?
That is correct. So a 2-year span would have to elapse in order
So-
for them to lose their non-conforming status.
Is there something we can put in there, a change of venue? If it's a vape shop and stays a vape shop, or it stops and another vape shop moves in 6 months later, or almost 2 years later, it can continue. But if the vape shop moves out and a donut shop moves in, and they're only in there 4 months and move out, I would think at that time, then it's more considered a different use, and a new vape shop would have to, I'm trying to prevent it from, you
From
know, that 2
reestablishing
year.
within that
If
2
somebody
years.
uses it and then, well, I'm still 2 years, I can bring somebody else in. And then go 2 more years, I can bring somebody else in. And
That would cause another ordinance amendment. I'm not sure if state code would allow the county to adopt a shorter non-conforming compliance section within the code. I'd have to defer and look at that research with the county attorney. But
Okay,
that
'cause-
would I'm mean, I'm not sure, because the 2 years covers all non-conforming uses, just
Right.
not vape shops. So that would be something specific to that particular use. We'd have to research to see whether or not that could be permitted within the county ordinance by state code.
Right, and that would be something I'd be curious to know, because, you know, if it moves out and something else moves in, then I'm consider a different use group for that, and they're permitted.
Sure.
You know, so they're permitted to move in, and without any special use permit, they're permitted to go in there, which is fine. But then I would think that would then prevent the vape shop, because it wasn't a continuous use, even if it wasn't in business for a year and 9 months.
Right.
It was still, it hadn't been used for something else.
Could we pass this tonight and then do an amendment? Should that be able to take
The
place?
amendment would be to the non-conforming section of the ordinance. So if you wanted to pass that tonight, I can certainly get with my colleagues over in the county attorney's office to see if that's something that we could pursue. And
But
report
yeah, I
back.
don't want to change anything tonight. I'm just thinking of what ifs, and when
Sure.
something move in, and you've got a vape shop that left and the neighborhood's happy. Donut shop moves in, they're even happier. And then all of a sudden,
And I want to know, Mr. Hipple, what are in those donuts?
yeah, not that.
Yeah.
And then another vape shop moves in and the neighborhood's all, you know, up in arms, say, well, I thought you had an SUP. How did they get, you know, so I'm thinking if it changes the use, maybe that would trigger a time limit. But
We can certainly look at the state code, because I do know that they do govern non-conforming uses in that specific 2-year window.
Okay.
But certainly I will, more than happy to contact our county attorney's office and we can research that.
yeah, and I just thought about it while we were talking.
Sure,
I'd
no.
have got to you earlier.
I understand.
Thank you.
Good
And
point.
I was kind of facetious about the donuts, but it does make me wonder about whether this is going to be something that would affect the way in which we ultimately may deal with the legalization of cannabis.
Edibles.
It's all, hopefully the definition in which we propose has cannabis products. So hopefully that, that was the intent of this definition, was kind of cover everything.
And so there was mention about lights that were in the windows of one shop, and that would not be regulated by our sign ordinance, then, would it?
Not if they're interior to the building or interior to the window itself, because it's exterior signs, but anything that's fastened on the outside, then that would fall under our lighting ordinance and that would not be permitted. We've actually had to cite a couple of them already.
So we couldn't determine, because a lot of them have these lights on the inside, and I mean, you can see them at Mars, it's ridiculous. So there's no way to control, I don't even know how to ask it, the brightness or how far it is distributed out into the community, even though it's on the inside?
In our current ordinance, we don't have the ability to enforce that now. Should future amendments come along to address window signage or window lights, that could be something that could be implemented within the ordinance, I believe.
It's more than just open.
Yeah. So, but that would have to be another change, but certainly, as you all discuss and direct staff.
Any other questions? All right, sounds good. All right, Mr. O'Connor, Tim, up again, sir. Thank you for staying late.
Just want to thank first and foremost Ms. Parrish and her team for being so responsive. Living in Towano, I got a lot of calls for Lightfoot in Towano and the lights, and Christy and her team got out there before one of the shops even opened. So also want to thank her for the education on cannabis and hookah lounges and vapes. So we've had some good discussions. So again, Planning Commission voted 5-0 in favor of this amendment, and I don't think there's much else to add unless the board has any questions.
Questions? Another good job.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Any speaker cards?
No, sir.
All right, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and look to the board for direction.
Motion to approve.
Motion for approval on the roll call, please.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, next, number 4, SUP-22-0021.8401 Hicks Island Road Tourism Home. Terry, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Mr. Stuart Evans of Evans Construction has applied for a special use permit to allow for the short-term rental of a 4-bedroom, single-family home at 8401 Hicks Island Road. The property is zoned A1, General Agricultural, designated rural lands on the Comprehensive Plan Land Use Map, and is located outside the primary service area. The property is served by private well and private sewer. If granted, this SUP would allow for short-term rentals throughout the year. No changes to the footprint of the home are proposed. Staff finds some favorable factors for this application, such as the presence of adequate off-street parking and that the applicant has stated that he will obtain the proper licensing and inspections. Staff finds the proposed use will not negatively impact surrounding property or development, nor is it expected to negatively impact levels of service for roads and other public services. While staff believes the location is generally considered appropriate for this use, staff finds that the proposal is not fully consistent with the adopted 2045 Comprehensive Plan recommendations for short-term rentals. Therefore, staff is unable to recommend approval of this application. At its December 7th meeting, the Planning Commission recommended denial of this application by a vote of 5-1. Should the board recommend approval of this application, staff has included proposed conditions for consideration. I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Good job. Thank you. All right. Well, look, Tim, you're up again, sir. You batting 100.
Thank you again. As the board's aware, the requirements for short-term rentals have morphed with the 2045 comp plan, and this application didn't comply with those performance standards on several issues. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend the December meeting, but in my absence, everybody voted not to approve, or was not in favor of approving this application, this SUP. So happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Entire planning commission said no?
I'm sorry.
It's 5-1.
I think there was one who voted in favor. So on a roll call vote, the commission voted not to recommend approval by a vote of 5-1.
Questions? Thank you, sir. And of course, the public hearing is left open, and it does say on my thing, the applicant has requested a postponement until the July 11th, 2023 regular meeting. I'll look to the board for.
Do we know why?
Mr. Getty's here.
Mr. Getty? Come on up, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm Vernon Getty of 1177 Jamestown Road.
Get out of here.
I think I'm required to do that, but anyway, I am here for the applicant, and the reason is, I know you all are aware, there's some Chesapeake Bay issues on this property. The applicant has met with the county, stormwater staff. They've given him remediation things that need to be done. At this point, they've hired Land Tech, an engineering firm, Matt Roth, a wetland scientist, and have a landscape company. While they've not begun physical work on the property, they're working through the issues, and we would like to have that work done before we bring it back to you for a vote. So, and frankly, thinking about it, I don't think you all meet in August, so I don't want to have to do this again. Maybe if we could defer it to the September meeting, it would.
Should I make a motion?
Let's see, are there any other speakers? I guess since it's public, it's open. I see no others. We don't have any speaker cards. Okay. And so I guess I probably ought to leave the
Public hearing open?
Public hearing open, thank you. Public hearing open, yes. Get me
It's
started.
been a long day.
That's right. Public hearing open and for the next, yes, sir.
I was just going to comment, but I'll let Ms. Larson make the motion. But you know, this has gone on since January, so if we push it out to September, I would hope that the applicant would recognize that when we come September, it's going to be one of two things. Either we're going to deal with the issue and dispose of it one way or the other, or you probably need to withdraw it if it's not ready.
Right.
So I really do not want to come to September and have another application for
Understood.
deferral.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking for September.
Okay, I'll make a motion to postpone till September 12th.
All right, we have a motion on the floor.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. Hipp?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Sir. All right, next we'll move into SUP-23-0004, Chickahominy Riverfront Park Master Plan Amendment. Susan, welcome again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Board of Supervisors. Mr. Alistair Perkinson, Parks Administrator for the Parks and Recreation Department, has submitted a request to amend Special Use Permit Case Number SUP-0014-2009 to formally update the Chickahominy Riverfront Parks Board-adopted Master Plan dated September 2020. Furthermore, this SUP application includes an updated master plan dated January of 2023. The subject property is located at 1350 John Tyler Highway, zoned PL, public lands, and classified as community character conservation, open space, or recreation on the 2045 comprehensive plan and is located outside the primary service area. To provide more context, I'd like to expand on the changes from the 2020 master plan compared to the 2023 master plan. The board-approved 2020 master plan included the following additions to or removal of proposed improvements: the addition of the proposed JCSA water treatment plant, the relocation of the long-term RV and boat storage to the eastern side of the park, the removal of the second entry, the addition of camper amenities, which includes propane filling station, laundry rooms, picnic and outdoor recreation areas, bathhouses, and a relocated pump-out station, and the addition of a second rowing building due to increased interest and growth of the sport. The 2023 master plan includes the following additions to or removal of proposed improvements: the relocation of the RV boat storage to the west of the pond, the realignment of the internal roadways to match current conditions throughout the park, the identification of a future drainfield site that would serve the pool and picnic shelter area, changing the verbiage for location I to pool, splash pad, and concessions, and to prominently identify the 150-foot right-of-way buffer. At its April 5th, 2023 regular meeting, the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval of the SUP request to the Board of Supervisors, subject to the proposed conditions. They also found it substantially in accord with the adopted comprehensive plan. Staff finds this proposal to be compatible with surrounding development and consistent with the James City County 2045 Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Ordinance. Staff recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve this application subject to the proposed conditions. Thanks for your time this evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Also, the applicant is here as well.
Questions?
Thank you, sir.
All right. Tim, back up again. They didn't like you. They sent you home.
Frank did this to you? Yes, he did, so.
Thank you, sir.
If it pleases the board, may I just address all four of your master plan amendments? I'll be
Yes.
happy to stay in case there's any questions, but Alistair's here and can certainly speak to his applications
Put them all out there.
better than I. So before you tonight, you have the Chickahominy Riverfront Park, Jamestown Beach Event Site, Upper County Park, and Warhill Sports Complex master plan amendments. By a vote of 5-0, the April 5th Planning Commission, all of these master plans were approved, recommended for moving it forward to you all. In each case, it was also determined that the master plans are indeed consistent with the 2045 comprehensive plan. One comment that was made was to potentially explore the entrance to the Chickahominy Park where the Freedom to Freedom Trail crosses, to make it a little bit more safe for bikers to traverse that intersection with people turning in with RVs and boats and the like. So that was one comment that was made and shared with Parks and Rec. So,
Questions? All right, how about we let Tim go home? He's got everything he needs?
I'm
Thank
happy to
you,
listen
sir.
in, but
Appreciate your service, and if you'd like to go home early, you're more than welcome.
thank you very much.
Thank you,
Have
sir.
a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Okay, we'll go ahead and open up public hearing. Anyone? Nobody speaking? That's good. Good. Any, go ahead, close public hearing, and,
I'll move the motion.
all right, roll call, sir.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Ms. Sadler.
Aye.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, next is SUP-23-0005, Jamestown Beach Event Park Master Plan Amendment. Ben, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Board of Supervisors. Mr. Alistair Perkinson, Parks Administrator for the Parks and Recreation Department, has submitted a request to amend special use permit, case number SUP-0010-2015, to formally update the Jamestown Beach Event Parks Board Adopted Master Plan, which was dated July 2020. The subject property is located at 2205 Jamestown Road, Zone PL Public Lands, classified as Community Character Conservation, Open Space, or Recreation on the 2045 Comprehensive Plan, and located inside the primary service area. The existing and proposed improvements illustrated in the master plan, Jamestown Beach Event Park dated July 2020 include relocating the fishing pier off VDOT property to the far end of the beach, adding additional restrooms and parking for events and beach patrons, addition of an event tent for use with the Ambler House, realigning the park entrance along Jamestown Road to intersect with the road leading to the marina, closing the section of Green Springs Road that runs in front of the park and aligning it to meet Jamestown Road, adding long-term boat storage to support revenue development in the marina, and the addition of a public-private running center to support community racing events and provide workspaces for parks and recreation staff. At the April 5th, 2023 regular meeting, the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval of this SCP request to the Board of Supervisors, subject to proposed conditions. They also found it substantially in accordance with the adopted comprehensive plan. Staff finds this proposal to be compatible with surrounding development and consistent with the James City County 2045 Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Ordinance. Staff recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve this application subject to the proposed conditions. Thank you for this time this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And
Questions? Oh, great job, Ben. Thank you, sir. All right. We've already had the PC report, so I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. No, close it. Look
I
for the
move the
board.
motion.
Roll call, please, sir.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye. All right, number 7, SUP-23-0006, Upper County Park Master Plan Amendment. Ben, back up. Thanks,
yes,
sir.
sir, back up again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Mr. Alistair Perkinson, Parks Administrator for the Parks and Recreation Department, has submitted a request to amend special use permit, case number SUP-0029-1994, to formally update the Upper County Parks Board adopted master plan, which was dated April 2021. Furthermore, this SUP application includes an updated master plan dated January 2023. The subject property is located at 180 Leisure Road, Zone PL, Public Lands, classified as Community Character Conservation, Open Space or Recreation on the 2045 Comprehensive Plan, and located outside the primary service area. The existing and proposed improvements illustrated in the master plan, Upper County Park dated January 2023, as well as changes being made from the 2021 master plan to the 2023 master plan include replacement of the toddler pool with a splash pad / ground feature, a half-mile paved multi-use trail, a community gymnasium with 2 full-sized indoor courts and a fitness area, a pickleball / tennis court, an off-leash dog area, an archery range, park maintenance and storage area, and increased parking to support new amenities. The 2023 master plan includes the following additions to or removal of proposed improvements, and that is the realignment of the half-mile paved multi-use trail to match the current proposed design on the 2023 master plan, which the trail is in a different location than it was shown on the 2021 master plan. At the April 5th, 2023 regular meeting, the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval of this SUP request to the Board of Supervisors, subject to the proposed conditions. They also found it substantially in accordance with the adopted comprehensive plan. Staff finds this proposal to be compatible with surrounding zoning development and consistent with the James City County 2045 Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Ordinance. Staff recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve this application subject to the proposed conditions. Thank you for your time this evening, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Questions? Ben, thank you. All right, public hearing, any speaker cards? Close public hearing, and I'll look for the board for action.
Move the adoption.
Roll call.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, SUP-23-0007, Warhill Sports Complex Master Plan Amendment. Suzanne? You're up. You're waiting for Ben to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Board of Supervisors. Mr. Alistair Perkinson, Parks Administrator for the Parks and Recreation Department, has submitted a request to amend special use permit case number SUP-0014-2016/MP-0002-2016 for the Warhill Sports Complex. Furthermore, this SUP application includes a board-adopted master plan dated September 2021. The subject properties are located at 4900 Stadium Trail, 5700 Warhill Trail, and 5720 Warhill Trail. Zoned PL, public lands classified as community character, conservation, open space, or recreation on the 2045 Comprehensive Plan, and located inside the primary service area. Since the approval of the board-adopted master plan dated September 2021, there have been no changes made. To date, the feedback we received from citizens included 1 phone call, 1 drop-in, and 2 emails seeking clarification of the proposed amenities and proposed amenities eliminated from the 2021 master plan. At its April 5th, 2023 regular meeting, the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval of the SUP request to the Board of Supervisors subject to proposed conditions. They also found it substantially in accord with adopted comprehensive plan. Staff finds this proposal to be compatible with surrounding development and consistent with the James City County 2045 Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Ordinance. Staff recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve this application, which subject to the proposed conditions. Thank you so much for your time this evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. As stated before, the applicant is available as well.
Questions? Great job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Too. All right, we'll go ahead and open up any speaker cards.
No, sir.
Close public comment. Look for the board for direction.
Move the motion.
Motion on the floor. Roll call.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Motion
And I'd also like to say what a wonderful job our Parks and Rec people do, and let everyone know what a great job they do, and the citizens are so happy with our parks and planning future and what we're doing and how we're making things better for the citizens to come out and enjoy them. So thank you, and thank you, team. All right.
Absolutely.
Next, we'll move into board considerations. Number one, FY 2024 budget adoption and resolution of appropriations. Sharon, welcome.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Before you this evening is a resolution to appropriate the fiscal year 2024 budget. The resolution reflects the county administrator's proposed budget and incorporates changes made since its release. Those changes are to the general fund only and include moving a vacant position from the Office of Economic Development to the Planning Department, a shifting of budgets between a few departments, and increases to 2 of our outside agencies to adjust for the most recent population figures, and moving the budget for the revenue that the county receives for animal-friendly license plates from miscellaneous revenue to state revenue. That funding is provided to Heritage Humane Society to support their spay and neutering efforts. There were no other changes to the budget, and the total budget remained the same. That concludes my remarks.
All right. Any questions for staff?
I did have one, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Mr. Stevens, I did want to clarify about the historical budget. Could you confirm the total and what that includes, please?
Yes, ma'am. That did include it. The request this evening was, did it include the Stonehouse discovery or remediation, looking for that site? And the answer is it does. So from a standpoint of the funding requested, current year was $11,700 for FY23. The recommended for FY24 is $28,400, and that does include that $22,000 ground penetrating radar study that they had requested. So they have, at least what's recommended is what was requested of the county this year.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I don't have, maybe these are questions, I'm not sure. But just thought it'd be worthwhile to clarify a little bit about the question of school funding. First, let me just say, my understanding is, and you can just tell me if I'm right or wrong, or you can correct anything that is not correct, that there is in the language for the resolution a provision that says that the county administrator is authorized to transfer up to $2 million from contingency to the schools if the state does not come through with the funding required for a 7% salary increase. Is that right?
Yes, the language includes up to $2 million of a transfer from contingency, if needed, to the school division once the state budget is adopted for the purpose of compensation adjustments for teachers.
So I know that the representatives of the Education Association, and I thank them for, I don't feel like, they are imposing on us by coming to make public comments. That's perfectly their right, and we want to hear from citizens who have concerns. But as I heard at least one of the representatives speak tonight, the point was that they wanted to make sure that there was the 7% available to provide for those contracts for teachers and other staff. And that is something that essentially, by adopting the resolution as presented, we would be doing, right?
Mr. McGlynn, just for clarification, we have had conversations with the school superintendent as recently as last week. And with the idea of $4 million being appropriated to the school division and an additional $2 million with the authority for me if they should need it.
Right.
That does in fact allow them to issue their contracts this week based on that conversation last week. And I believe that would include a 7% raise
That's right.
for their staff. So again, our total risk could be $6 million, but $4 million is, if you'd adopt the resolution as proposed, would go to the school division with an additional 2 authorized if needed. And we did have revised language to paragraph 19, if you'd want to include that. It was a little softer language, but it still gets back to if it's needed, that additional $2 million would be available, and it does allow for those contracts to be issued at 7%.
Right. Okay, thank you. And the other part that I wanted to just clarify is that I heard some discussion about percentages related to SOQ that suggested that we shouldn't take any great pride in meeting 100% of SOQ. The point is that we double the requirement, so we're providing actually 200% of what would be required under SOQ because the state, first of all, sets that based on their calculation of our ability to pay for schools. We are doing much more than what the state is saying that we are able to do and should be expected to do. They also, during that Great Recession, as we talked about before, scaled back on the number of support positions that were funded under SOQ, that were actually SOQ positions. And then we didn't eliminate those positions. We picked up the cost of those positions locally for the school system. They have not been eliminated. They have actually just been shifted in terms of who's responsible for paying them. So that helps to explain partly why we are paying 200% of the SOQ requirement. But I just wanted to clarify those points, make it clear that if the concern of the Education Association is that there's an expectation that that 7% raise would be provided, whether the state acts or not, the answer, if we adopt the resolution, and I'm fine with the recommended amended statement that Mr. Stevens just alluded to, that there would be that 7% increase.
I just had a follow-up. There was a comment made earlier this evening about the SOQs and the non-SOQs positions in that the state and the local level paying those positions. But if it's a non-SOQ position, it is 100% paid for by the local level, correct?
That's my understanding.
Right, and I think people don't understand maybe when, is that my chair? Okay, sorry, sounded like a cat. I think people, they hear SOQs and perhaps they don't understand, which we talked a little bit about at our school liaison meeting. So I just wanted to give a little bit of an example. And I thank the school division for sending this over. But for example, there are 11 assistant principal positions that are budgeted. The SOQs say 1. So we're picking up 10 as a locality. You could not operate. No school division, at least, I realize I've been off 8 years, but I stay in touch with the Virginia School Boards Association. No school system in the Commonwealth, I believe, operates at SOQ levels. It's just not doable. And that really, so that's where I get my ear up a little bit when I hear the state talk about a surplus, because there is not a surplus. There are bills due. And this is one area that has a very serious bill due. And I think people need to understand at the local level that we are picking up a huge piece of what should be also, yes, on a local level, we want to support our schools. We should be getting more help from the Commonwealth as far as that goes. So the other one were our elementary TAs. There are 9 positions that are SOQ. There's 84 TAs. The schools simply not operate without teacher assistants. And there's no other year like this year to have that proven. because they have been pulled in 101 directions to step into classrooms when there have been sub shortages. They have been pulled to be with special ed students, to do one-on-ones. I mean, we just would simply not be able to operate our school system. So I'm happy if anybody is watching and is interested in knowing more about the SOQ positions that are not funded, that we are picking up on the local level. And this is the last one. There are 12 special ed that the state pays for. There are 104 special ed aides that the school system has to have, often required by the IEPs. So, it's really something. I mean, what this county does to help supplement for the school system. And, we want to compensate our teachers. But there was also a comment made about how we needed to do for our own. We've been working on that tirelessly this year. We know we have a shortage in our police and in our other areas here in the county, and we've been working to try to address that. We've taken it very seriously. I think that's where you kind of get into the ebb and the flow and what you're going to do on a budget, because it's not, it would be super easy to say, okay, well, you take all of this, but then you've got other people that you have to concern yourself with, that also need to make a living wage. So it's a very difficult time, and much appreciation to all people involved, and especially to staff. You all have done a lot of work during this budget season. I know there's been a lot of conversations going back and forth, especially with the school system. And I know that during this too, we've had things that we have not budgeted for that I'm sure are needed. And, we're also working without a full employee roster because we've been unable to fill positions. And so I know this has been a trying time for everybody, and I just so appreciate the work. But I did just want to point out some of those SOQ positions that we do pick up 100% for, and the Commonwealth needs desperately to do better, and for all the children, for sure. So, thank you.
Thank you. Since we're on this subject, couple of comments were made, and this is the reason we don't have employees and can't find employees and all that is, well, everybody across the United States is having the same issue, whether they're a government facility, whether they're private or whatever. So to get up and say that we're not doing what we need to do, and that's the reason we don't have the employees and can't keep them and everything else, everybody's going through the same thing. There's a company out here that's not trying to find people, and to talk about us putting signs up to get more employees, I think that's a smart move. What do we don't put a sign up and not get any employees? I mean, and when this all, it's frustrating to me, and by speaking up, you become the scapegoat for all the comments and all, and that's fine. I got tough skin. I'm not worried about any of that, or much give a hoot. But when I was, this is our second year budget. This is not a new budget. So all these changes on a second year budget, to me, is ridiculous. It should be on a new budget when we're working on a new budget. The budget was already set 2 years ago, and now we're changing everything we always do. So that's a frustration. Have I always supported teachers? Yes. Have I always supported schools? Yes. And I've got 7 children that have been through the school system. I know the school system a little bit. And we have great teachers. We have a great school system, but we can't give them everything. We have to take care of our employees too. If we took, and I was told at the very beginning of all these conversations that teachers need a raise. And I heard that. Heard it by many people. Everybody up on this board heard it. So we went ahead and said, okay, how can we do this? Well, then we're finding out it's not just the teachers, it's everybody across the board. Well, that's not what I was told. When you came up and spoke, you came up, citizen, and said the teachers need a raise. So the thing about going across the board and paying everybody across the board, I'm saying pay them all. But I'm saying if you took a teacher's average and you said, okay, at 10% increase is X, and you took that number and said, okay, if you're making this at a 10% increase is this number, that is the percentage that should go to everyone. So you look at, okay, if they're making way up here, maybe their percentage isn't 10%, maybe their percentage is 2.5%. But the person down at the very bottom who's doing all the work and keeping things clean and everything else, maybe theirs is 15. It would average to 10. But common sense leading a group would tell you that this is the way to do business and say, I can't give them all 10, but I'll give the teachers 10%. And I'll look at, okay, now, what does this part of staff need? What is that? And I decide it by the medium income of the teacher. And then that percentage gets layered up or down. And so instead of getting a 10%, you may as upper staff get 2.5. Well, 2.5 is going to be equal to what that teacher's making at 10. And that makes it fair across the board, and that saves money, and everybody gets a little bit. So that's just my 2 cents and business sense of how to control your money and that sort of thing. And I won't go any further because I'll be on the bulletin board again, and I'm used to it. They just stick them right next to each other. So yes, ma'am. Do you have something?
Yeah, you're quite the comic book character these days.
Yes, I am. I see that.
Isn't that nice?
Yes, it is. Any other questions?
Very respectful for our
Thank
board
you.
chair. So, yeah, I just wanted to respond to a few comments that made it sound like we didn't care about teachers, assistants, or bus drivers. As I recall at our joint meeting, we all, I think, all said we support teachers, teachers' assistants, bus drivers, but our issue was what's the school division going to do to rectify all of this? And to your point about the different raise levels, I don't recall ever saying that we didn't care about other positions in the school system. So I take issue with that. So I just wanted to clarify that we have said it repeatedly that we care about those positions. But the school system also needs to do their due diligence to make sure these positions can be funded adequately. And as has been pointed out, we have hundreds of people that we fund, employ, and need raises as well. So I think we do a pretty good job of making sure our teachers and assistants and bus drivers are in our purview of what we're trying to accomplish. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for staff?
The only other comment I'd have for staff is to, again, echo the appreciation for all the hard work that goes into this process. I know that your staff is also one of those places where we've had challenges in filling positions, and to be able to handle all the responsibilities, getting through the audit every year, and putting together a budget that really is very much in tune with what we need to do to be successful is really a great job. So thank you very much, Sharon, for everything you're doing, and your staff.
Very much.
I had,
I'm going to look for the board for.
I had one question. One question I want clarification on, and then we can get to the other. And that has to do with under the capital projects fund, capital improvement expenditures. We have a business ready sites program. There's $98,000 set for FY24, and in my discussions with the county administrator, we had in 23 we had 148,000, and this is basically money that's set aside for studies and due diligence and things that we need to do to prepare some of these sites for business ready sites. So the concern I have is that we're focusing on 3 sites. One is in the Stonehouse Commerce Park. Is that one we own?
Yes, sir. There's one of the 3 that we've got listed in the coming years are property we own. The others are private property.
The other 2 are private properties. One is the Hazelwood, and one is is owned by, I believe, the Hornsby family, which is right next to where Hazelwood is on both sides of the street there. And what I have concern with is that we are sort of in new territory because we have done process like this before, but it's always been on property that the county has owned. And we make an investment in that property, turning that we were going to turn around and going to market that property and get somebody to come in and be part of our infrastructure. What I'm concerned about here is that we have two of them that are private. And to my knowledge, I don't think there's been any contemplation of cost share from the private owners. And so what I want a clarification of is that the money that was appropriated or put into the budget for FY23, the $148,000, and then the $98,000 that's in the budget for this year is basically money that we put into the budget. But when it comes time to actually expend that money, that would come back to this board for determination of how that money would be spent. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Mr. Eisenhower, for sure, the money that's out there, almost $250,000 you've talked about, we have sort of identified that to be our match for the Hazelwood grant that the state awarded several months ago. That paperwork has been coming from the state. We were told we would have that in May. My expectation is we would have that conversation about acceptance of that grant and maybe this issue as a whole during that during your business meeting when that comes forward.
Okay,
So we haven't obligated any expenditures, and we wouldn't until after we have that discussion.
I just wanted to make sure that in adopting the budget tonight, we basically we're still going to be able to deal with how we go about doing it and what we do going forward on that we're not essentially committing the money to that at this point.
Yes, sir.
It's
not
just set aside.
If the board at a future meeting, as we have that discussion, says we don't want to do that, then we wouldn't do that. We're not committed to that at this point by your adoption of the budget tonight.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then the other question I have is that you mentioned paragraph of the 19 of the thing. Is the new language already in that, or do we need to adopt that separately, or what?
I think if your motion would include inclusion of the new language, I think that would be sufficient from our standpoint. It's just paragraph 19 in the budget resolution that is in your package.
Can we just ask if the board as a whole would have any objection to substituting that paragraph?
I'm good with it.
I'm good with it.
Okay. So then when it comes time to approve the motion, we'll do it as amended by the placement of the current paragraph for this new one.
Just made the
Roll
motion.
call.
Mr. McGlennon?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, next, Moses Lane Community Development Block Grant Application. Welcome, sir. How you been?
I'm fine, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Von Pauler, James City County Neighborhood Development Administrator. Getting
Long
soft in the
night.
head, yeah. Before you this evening is, for your consideration, is an application for funding, community development block grant funding for the Moses Lane community. You all may know that Moses Lane was the site of 6 developed properties by Habitat for Greater Williamsburg and the Peninsula. Those residents there came forward asking for something to be done about the end of the street, the western part of the street, so that it could be added into the state maintenance system because it's currently gravelled and they were suffering degradation of drainage and potholes. With your permission, we procured planning grant funding in 2021 to study the area and also hire an engineer to do engineering plans for that road. I'm before you this evening asking for your approval for a grant that would have $1,562,236 for the development of the end of the street and the overtopping of the existing street, but also include regrading of ditches and some drainage improvements. It would also include housing rehabilitation for 3 units and the removal of derelict structures that are present in the community, and the opportunity to develop at least 1 site for affordable housing in the neighborhood. We're in discussion with the property owners, so we hope that could go up to 3. The budget would include $291,582 of local match from our Community Development Fund, and for the total grant amount of $1,863,818. Staff recommends approval of the application, and I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
What is the county's portion again?
The county's portion would be $291,582.
If I can just say a couple of words about this, we've had a number of discussions on the Scattered Site Housing Committee and the project team that has been working on affordable housing options, and I want to congratulate Mr. Poller for the creative work that he's been doing to try to make sure that we can draw some resources in. You know, when we talk about affordable housing, here is a real opportunity to put some additional units on the ground for people who are earning service industry wages in many instances. This is also going to significantly upgrade a neighborhood that does have a number of homes existing on already that don't have street lights, that don't have some of the ability to deal with the stormwater that's in the area, and may provide some opportunity for some additional workforce / service industry affordable housing in the future.
Any other questions? I think if we spend 200,000 for 1.8, that's not a bad deal.
Mr. Chairman, I move the resolution to authorize the application.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, sir. All right, next, board requests and directives.
Good.
Good.
Had an opportunity to, let's try to find my book here, attend a meeting last night up at in Norwich with Sun
Tribe.
Yeah, Sun Tribe. It was predominantly aimed at folks who live around in Mary Oaks and around the area of the proposed site, the one that was that's still coming forward to us. And it was a reasonably good turnout of folks, and they gave a good presentation. So it was more for the public, but I was there as the only board member, and I think Mr. Polster was there. But we got to listen to him a little bit, and it will actually give me an opportunity to ask some more questions of staff as it comes forward. I believe that they have extended the opportunity for us to go out and look at the site with them. Have you already gone?
Yes, I was.
Okay, I told them
yesterday.
I'd call them back and see if I could get scheduled sometime next week. But it's probably going to be I think another month or so, at least, before it goes to the Planning Commission. And then the other thing we had was the I had Teacher of the Year awards that we all got. I think most of us were there, and that was impressive. And I do have to give the school division and the Schools Foundation really good credit, because they did it in an expeditious manner. It didn't drag on, but it was really well focused, and I thought it was really well presented, and I was very impressed with the group. We had quite a good turnout of folks in the community for that.
I have a couple of things. Thank you, Ms. Sadler, for yielding your time to me. I would just point out that today is Teacher Appreciation Day, and we certainly do appreciate our teachers. And I think it is important to keep things in context. You know, Virginia, which is one of the top 10 wealthiest states in the country, has an average teacher salary across the whole Commonwealth that is $5,000 below the national average. That's not something we should be proud of, but we all have to work together on it. And so once again, we point to this Commonwealth and say, pick up your share of what is expected to provide the quality of compensation for teachers that they deserve. We're trying our hardest to do it, but it's hard to do it all alone. We did have a good meeting of the school liaison committee earlier or last week, and we talked about the budget issues, of course, but we also got an opportunity to hear a little bit about the pre-K centers that the school board authorized a design contract on, and the restoration programs that they're initiating.
Supposed to talk more about that at our next liaison meeting.
Yes, that is designed to address issues of persistent absenteeism and returning to sort of understanding of proper rules of conduct and behavior in schools after a period in which students were often not there because of the pandemic. And I also just wanted to apologize for not being able to stay for the Habitat Builder Blitz, which Supervisor Larson not only attended at the opening as I did, but she stayed and did great work. I understand she was offered some positions from some of the builders there.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure, some positions.
To come on staff. And on Saturday, we both also attended a very inspiring event at Cedar Grove Cemetery, a blessing of the ancestors, which is designed to draw attention to the African Americans who were buried in a segregated part of that cemetery, and the work that's being done to identify the bodies at the First Baptist Church as well. And just very quickly, I would also spent a little bit of time at the Riverside Doctors Hospital 10th anniversary. Finally, I know you're anxious for me to say that word. Next Thursday, the 18th of March, not this one, but the next one, May, I'm sorry, the 18th of May, I'll be holding a Grove community meeting for residents of Grove to come out and talk about issues of concern to them and to hear about some of the things that are going on. It will be at 6 p.m. at Little Zion Church on Pocahontas Trail. So with that, I will turn it over to
Thank you.
Ms.
And
Larson.
I have quite a few items as well, so I apologize too. This is the second year I've attended that Cedar Grove recognition, and it is really quite moving, and it involves a lot of James City County citizens as well. And it, you forget that it wasn't that long ago that there was some serious segregation, so much as that you weren't allowed to mix in a graveyard, and you often got an unmarked grave. So it's really something, and it's okay to learn about that piece of our history, and so we can do better. But I'll start out with the community meeting. Community meeting tomorrow night, Berkeley District. We're going to hop over to the Roberts District for just a bit, because that's where we're going to be at Billsburg, which formerly known as the Berkeley District. 6 p.m. Hope you'll come out. We've got Mr. Stevens will be joining me. We've got we're going to be talking about the budget. We'll be talking about marina improvements, tourism, and Mr. Stevens, is there any, I know I'm leaving something out, but we're just going, and anything else that anybody brings up, we are happy to discuss about the community. So we hope that you'll come there. We'll be outside. So I wanted to, I'm very behind in mentioning but it was brought to my attention by Chris Basic, and he wanted to share some cool news on behalf of the Williamsburg Youth Baseball League. And as you know, April 15th was Jackie Robinson Day in the Major League Baseball, where April 15th was the date of his big league debut, and the entire Major League wears 42 on their jersey as recognition. Well, Saturday, April 15th was also the Williamsburg Youth Baseball League opening day. And Mr. Basic wanted me to especially mention some James City County employees. He worked with Ernest Bird and Matt Austin at General Services and Tyler Cobb at Parks and Rec to get number 42 painted on the field. And it was a huge success for opening day. And they posted it on their social media, and it was also picked up and reposted by the Babe Ruth Little League. So he just wanted to send a shout out to Ernest, Matt, and Tyler for making it happen. So, and he had told me this back in April, and I completely forgot to bring it up, but I didn't want that to go unrecognized. So I appreciate everything that they did. I wanted to mention School Liaison Teacher of the Year. Mr. McGlennon has covered School Liaison Teacher of the Year. Thank you, Mr. Eisenhower. But also just wanted to mention that we had Representative Whitman there. We had Senator Mason and Delegate Batten, which I thought was really important that they came out also, along with several people from the community, to recognize our teachers. Much appreciated. And I'm going to close with Habitat because when we got to our house, and Keith Denny, I know you guys have heard this, but when Keith Denny went through the list of what we were going to be doing, and he finished, I said, that was German apparently, because I didn't recognize anything that you said you were going to be, that we were going to be taking on today. I just cannot get over how hard the people that were there representing the county worked. I mean, it was just incredible. And when I say what he said was, we're going to pull up all the deck boards. We're going to build a new deck. We're going to pull up the boards on the front porch. We're going to put new boards down. We're going to mortar the bricks. We're going to replace the window trim. We're going to remove the debris. It was just unbelievable. Now, our homeowner worked side by side with us the entire time. The removing debris, I was like, oh yeah, I got that, as long as there's no snakes involved. But Vaughn, Barb Watson, Keith, Paul's daughter, Paul's wife, Keith's daughter, they never sat down. I can't say the same. I was exhausted. I had to sit down a couple of times. They worked so hard. Paul, am I forgetting anybody that was there? Pardon? Yes, they came in to help us at the end. The window trim kind of got us, but they came in to help us at the end, which was much appreciated. But I think our staff's the best anyway. But just seeing the way that they spent their Saturday doing that and had a skill set I had no idea that any of them had. Paul told me he's built several decks, or maybe his wife told me that. Maybe she said, Paul builds decks all the time, and Paul almost single-handedly built the deck. So anyway, I just want to say thank you to them, and thank you to Habitat for Humanity and all the volunteers that came out to James Terrace. My mom was very upset because she was not on the list, but I said, they came by and left a thing twice, so you just missed it. So, she was not very happy that I was down the street working on somebody else's house, but I'm sure I'll hear more about that. But along those same lines, I just want to wish my mom next week, 18th will be her 81st birthday. My mom still works full-time for Riverside Hospital as an RN, and this is also Nurses Month. So she's just incredible, and I just really appreciate all that she does to support me. When I was in public service with little kids, she helped me out so I could attend meetings, all while having to go to work the next day. So I just thank her. So anyway.
Happy birthday, Ruth's mom.
Thank you.
Yes. And I'm sorry I couldn't make the
It's understandable, but Paul did say, well, part of the reason we picked this house is because we thought we were going to have Mr. Hipple.
And we should have.
Yeah,
I had to bug out at the last minute.
Somebody call that man. That's
Yes,
right.
thank you.
That's right.
So, like to let everybody know that this weekend, if they can, make it up to Toanna Firehouse. They're having the fish fry this weekend. So if you get a chance to run by and pick something up or stay for a little conversation, the volunteers would love to have you up there. And also, I won't be at that one either. I rarely miss them, but I'll be missing this one. My son, Michael Jr., is getting married to Mackenzie. So I'm gaining a new daughter on Saturday. So welcome her to the family. And, we should have a real fun time on Saturday. I'm sure he'll have a funner time than I will, but I get to have a new dog.
Very nice.
That's great. All right, that's all I had, County Administrator.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, just a couple quick items. One, I do want to mention our Newtown Tunes, Parks and Recreation, partnership with Culture Fix and Newtown Commercial Association is doing an after-hour concert series most Wednesdays in May. It started last week, so the next three are May 10th, May 17th, May 24th, 5:30 p.m., Sullivan Square, which is behind Legacy Hall, 4301 Newtown Avenue.
Come to the community meeting first tomorrow night.
Yes, ma'am. But those that are each place, yeah, we'll figure that out. So they do conflict a little bit. And then Family Fun Fest, Parks and Recreation, really for all ages of family, Saturday, May 20th, Chickahominy Riverfront Park, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And should be a lot of fun for all. So just want to mention those two activities that our staff's putting on or being part of. That's all I have.
Thanks, sir. All right, we don't have any closed session tonight, so I'll look for adjournment until 1 p.m. on May 23rd, 2023 for a business meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved.
All right. Roll call, please, sir.
Ms. Sadler? Aye. Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye. We're adjourned.